If you're not using the HuntStand app for turkey hunting, you're definitely missing the boat. So I'm gonna go over a process here that I like to use when I apply HuntStand to turkey hunting. And you can either use the entire process in your own hunts, or you can just break off little bits and pieces of information from this. Whatever tidbits might help you be more successful in the turkey woods. So let's get after it here. First of all, you gotta find some turkey ground. So a couple of the main helpful features in HuntStand would be our property information and our public land maps. So with the property information, you're gonna be able to find landowner names, addresses, mailing addresses, all the information that you need to be able to find a private property and hopefully gain permission. On the public land side, we've got a couple of different map layers you can use. We've got public lands and hunting lands. You're gonna be able to find some different property types that are publicly accessible through each of those. You're definitely gonna wanna scour those in detail. And a little bit of an insider tip I can give you is look for some of those types of public land that might not be as obvious to other turkey hunters. Stuff like waterfowl production areas or even aquatic management areas sometimes allow hunting. So if you can just do a little bit more research and homework, you might be able to find some spots for turkey hunting that you might not have otherwise thought of, which means a lot of other people aren't thinking about it. Like waterfowl production areas, for instance. They can still have great turkey habitat, and perhaps all you have to do is maybe just use non-toxic shots. So if you're hunting with TSS, you're gonna be set with that already. Otherwise, just maybe switch up your load and you might be able to access turkey ground that other people haven't even thought about. Once you've found some of those spots where you might wanna hunt, whether it be private or public land, now it's time for some e-scouting. HuntStand is such a comprehensive mapping system with so many different base layer options and map overlays that you can do really high level detailed scouting for turkeys. Going all the way out to that high level at a macro perspective, especially if you're hunting somewhere new, using something like the tree cover overlay can be really helpful, because if you're hunting turkeys, they need trees. They roost in trees, they spend a lot of time in timber, they forage in timber. Turkeys basically just need trees no matter where you're gonna be hunting them. So using that tree cover layer can help you really quickly just find those bands and corridors of timber where you're most likely gonna be able to hone in and find some turkeys. Once you've narrowed it down from that more macro perspective and you start to really funnel things down in your e-scouting, you're gonna wanna look for some of the other core parts of turkey habitat that are just really important, like hardwoods. Turkeys will forage in hardwoods. They'll be in there scratching through leaves, looking for bugs, eating acorns, that sort of thing. And also evergreens. Evergreens can make for great roost trees, especially in parts of the country where it might be primarily hardwoods. If you've got an evergreen stand of some pines or anything that a turkey could roost in, especially in some of the northern states, pines and evergreens make for really good thermal cover. So a lot of times up here in the north where I'm from, you'll see turkeys exclusively roosting in pines during the winter months because it gives them just that extra layer of protection from all the nasty winter elements that they need to survive. So hardwoods are great, but also don't overlook those evergreens. And then in addition to timber, terrain. Turkeys just tend to gravitate toward areas that have terrain, whether it just be subtle draws, bigger ridge systems, anything where they can have good vantage points. They just tend to congregate in those areas. So if you can find that combination of hardwoods and evergreens and a little bit of terrain, and then probably the most important factor out of all of it, a consistent water source. You are not going to find turkeys if you cannot find a water source in the vicinity. So that is the #1 thing in this whole equation. Find a consistent water source, whether it be a river or a creek or just anywhere that is going to consistently hold water during the time that you want to be hunting turkeys. You're going to need to find that. So once you have that water located, you can pay attention to some of those other factors, but water is definitely going to be central in the equation. Depending on what part of the country you're in, agriculture is another key component that if you can find it, it can be really helpful when you mix it in with all the other things that turkeys like. Now, you're not going to necessarily find big agriculture everywhere in the country, and honestly, some parts of the country, they don't even have the type of soil or conditions suitable for even growing food plots. So where you can find agriculture, it can be the icing on the cake as it relates to finding those areas where turkeys are going to habituate. If you got water, you got hardwoods, you got a mixture of terrain types, you've got a mixture of habitat types, a diverse ecosystem, and then add in food on top of that in the form of agriculture, and most likely you're gonna find turkeys. And you can use HuntStand with the aerial imagery to find all that stuff pretty easily. So once you're confident that you've narrowed down an area where it has the things turkeys need, the next thing you're gonna wanna start to think about is access. So how are you going to get in and out of these properties? Both just from a logistical standpoint in terms of how much time you might have or how much effort you might wanna spend. And then also on the strategic side, try to identify some limited access points, places where other people aren't gonna go, especially if you're on public land. A great example of that would be using waterways to access spots where turkeys are at. Quite a few people are doing that nowadays, but it's still a pretty open playing field. So if you can find water access where you can get in with a canoe or a kayak or a duck boat or whatever it might be to backdoor those birds and get around some of that other human pressure, that can be a huge advantage for you. And once again, super easy to find those waterways in HuntStand. Now, as you're going through this whole e-scouting process, the most important part is to start marking up your map. You don't want to just look at the maps and try to commit everything to memory. There's a reason why we have a full-scale system built into HuntStand for marking up your maps. So drop pins, mark up the map however you need to so you get that visual picture start to be built, and then you're going to be able to proceed to your next part once you're done with that e-scouting, and that is ground truthing everything with boots on the ground. Once you've done all your e-scouting, it's time to put your boots on the ground. And this is going to be a process where you go in and you evaluate all that e-scouting and you ground truth it to make sure your assumptions are correct, so that you're not just going in there blind on opening day assuming that all your e-scouting was accurate. You're going to want to go in there and ground truth it as much as possible. So as you're going through this process, you're going to want to continue marking up that map. You're going to be looking for sign, you're going to be looking for turkeys, you're going to continue dropping those pins, all the information to start building that picture more comprehensively so that when the time does come around to hunt, you're going to know exactly what you're working with. Another really important tool to use in HuntStand while your boots are on the ground would be the track tool. As you're making your way in and out of these properties, odds are you're going to find some trails or ways to get in and out that are better than others. So if you use that track tool, you're going to be able to lay down those tracks so that when you end up going back there in the dark to go after a turkey, you're not just going to be stumbling around the woods wasting a bunch of time. Other subtle things to pay attention to. If you find yourself in a position where you don't have a whole lot of time and you don't get to do a lot of scouting right before your season starts and you're more in that late winter phase, you're still going to want to pay attention to where you're seeing turkeys, even if they're in their winter flocks. Because if they're in winter flocks in a particular area, that means at the toughest time of year, when it's the hardest for them to survive, they're in an area where they have the resources they need. So it's going to be a gold mine come turkey season because those birds are going to disperse all throughout that landscape. So odds are where that winter flock is, it might be the center of the bullseye for the larger turkey disbursement that's going to happen during the spring. And as those gobblers spread out, you can almost guarantee they're going to be in the area if you find them in a winter flock. Another big consideration as you're out there doing your boots on the ground scouting is thinking about some setups where you might be able to go during inclement weather. If you still want to be able to get out there while it's rainy or crappy outside, maybe try to come up with some spots that lend themselves better to setting up a ground blind or giving yourself some cover so that you can still get out there and hunt and not be miserable. And as you're doing that, make sure you drop those pins in HuntStand. Trail cameras for turkeys. I still don't think they're nearly as popular as they should be. I run a ton of trail cameras during turkey season on well over a dozen properties, and part of it's for scouting, but also part of it is because it just adds to the whole turkey hunting experience. Like right now, for instance, it's winter, I'm getting ready for turkey season, and I'm already getting those very first images and videos of gobblers strutting. So it's just one more thing that adds to the overall excitement of the experience. And if you're using stealth cam or muddy cell cams, two of the best cell cams you're gonna get, well, they operate through the Command Pro app, and the Command Pro app is tied directly into HuntStand through a partnership. So you're going to be able to save all your trail camera placements in the Command Pro app, and they'll sync with HuntStand. So as you're going through, doing all your e-scouting, looking at your maps, you're going to be able to view all your trail camera images for turkeys right on the same map in HuntStand. As you're getting down to the finish line with your e-scouting before you're actually ready to get out there and hunt, hopefully you can get out the night before your hunt and try to put a gobbler to bed. HuntStand is priceless for roosting turkeys. It doesn't matter if it's The first day of the season or the last day of the season, when you're trying to get out there and put some gobblers to bed, you can use HuntStand in a really strategic way to pinpoint their location. It can be as simple as just trying to hone in on them and drop a pin as accurately as you possibly can, so that when you go back the next morning, you know exactly where they're at. But to take that even a step further, what you can do is circle that bird as he's still gobbling on the limb and drop multiple pins, or create lines so you'll have a bunch of transecting lines, and odds are you're going to be within a 50-yard radius when all those lines come together, so you know exactly where that bird is at. You're done with your e-scouting, it's time to hunt. So getting out there to execute your game plan, you're going to want to have at least an A, B, a C, and a D option, ideally, if you've done all your homework in advance. If you've knocked on those doors and gotten private land access permission, if you've done all your public land scouting, give yourself more than one option, no matter what time of the season is, whether it's opening day or midway through the season or at the end of the season. You're going to want to have a pile of options to choose from, because you're not always going to be able to guarantee that you're going to be able to strike a gobbler that's willing to work with you on any given property. So the more options, the better. When you're making your game plan to get out there and hunt, one of the obvious things you're going to want to do is check the weather forecast. Once again, that's something that's integrated directly into HuntStand. We're going to have an extended forecast, we're going to have an hourly forecast. So that's going to help you choose the right clothing, it's going to help you choose all the gear that you need to make sure you're going to get out there and have a comfortable hunt. HuntStand even helps you figure out when you need to get up in the morning. We got solunar times, so it's going to give you the sunrise and sunset. That'll help you figure out when to set your alarm, and if you're hunting public land, you're probably going to want to get in there nice and early, beat some other people to the punch. So all of that is integrated directly into HuntStand as you're building this game plan. As you get out there, if you do have a gobbler roosted, the other thing you're going to want to think about is, what is his direction of travel most likely to be when he hits the ground? Assuming that he's not just going to come running right to your call, because, you know, unfortunately they don't always do that. In fact, most times they probably don't do that. So visualize what is most likely going to be his direction of travel. Analyze the terrain. Use the 3D maps, look at the surrounding area. Is he likely to be going to an ag field? Is he going to work his way across a bench on a ridge? If he's roosted down low, is he going to start climbing to get high? All these things you should consider, because as you slip in there in the morning in the dark, put yourself in a position where you're already going to be in his natural direction of travel, and your calling is just going to add some extra sauce on top of that. If you weren't able to roost a gobbler the night before your hunt, and even if you get out there in the morning and they're just being tight-lipped, well, that's where all your scouting is really going to come into play, because you might just have to put yourself in a position where the turkeys are most likely to be, and then wait for them to get active. So all the things you've done leading up to this point can make a big difference. HuntStand is also really helpful for the safety aspect. So we have location sharing. So whether you got somebody at home who cares about you and they want to know where you are to keep track of you while you're out in the woods, or if you're out there buddy hunting and you guys are dividing and conquering to hunt an area, with that location tracking, you can make sure you're not stepping on each other's toes. And if you tell someone you're going to be home for dinner at 6 o'clock and it gets to roll up towards much later hours and they're starting to worry about you, they're going to be able to see where you are if they have a HuntStand account and they're looking at that location. The last thing I'm going to mention here when it comes to using HuntStand for turkey hunting, you got to have it at your fingertips. So if you're going to be hunting in an area where you're not likely to have service, make sure to download your offline map before you head out there. So you're going to have access to that mapping information the whole time, whether you have cellular service or not. So if you want to tap into all the features I've mentioned here in HuntStand for turkey hunting, make sure you get a premium membership level, whether it be HuntStand Pro, or if you're a deer hunter, you can even upgrade to HuntStand Pro Whitetail for some more deer hunting features. But either way, you're going to want that premium membership to gain full access to all the tools that we offer. So get on out there, use HuntStand, and good luck in the turkey woods.